If you think an invitation card can change your whole life, you'd probably laugh. I did too. But then, on a damp Wednesday morning in Chicago, as I was getting ready for a 3-hour strategy meeting, it arrived. Light as a reminder, heavy as a summons. I didn't open it right away. I just looked at it lying there on the desk. A jet-black envelope, heavy in hand, with cold silver lettering shimmering under the office light. Something about the way it appeared, no sender, no warning, made me feel like I was standing at the threshold of something both ancient and dangerous. I pulled out the card. A pitch-black cardstock embossed with silver floral patterns in a vintage style, so elegant it felt almost cold. The cursive line at the top read, "The Dunbridge Family Reunion Celebrating 30 Years of Tradition, held in Philadelphia." I exhaled slowly. It had been a long time since I'd seen that name, Dunbridge, a surname that was both a scar and a bloodline. My name is Barbara Dunbridge, although I haven't used that surname on any official document in nearly a decade. These days, in the business world, I go by Barbara Langston, founder of the luxury co-working brand Langston Collective, headquartered in Chicago, with branches in 8 major U.S. cities. But 20 years ago, I was the artist daughter of the Dunbridge family, the name that never came up at Thanksgiving dinners. When my father offered me an internship at Dunbridge Wealth, his investment firm, I flatly refused and moved west to study interior design. To them, I had committed betrayal. In their eyes, I was the one who broke tradition, the one chasing some vague passion, a girl who refused to be a Dunbridge simply because I didn't want to live a life that had been mapped out for me. I gently traced the address line, Fairmont Heritage, Philadelphia. I knew that hotel. One of the most expensive and historic venues on the East Coast, often hosting billionaire weddings and political galas. I nearly laughed. They invited me to a family reunion, at the very place that once wouldn't let me into the room when I was just a sophomore intern. Had they forgotten? My phone buzzed. It was Eliza, my cousin. "Did you get the invite?" Her voice chirped, trying too hard to sound friendly. "I did," I replied dryly. "It's a big one this year. There's going to be a singer and even a mayor giving a speech. I figured you'd want to dress properly." I looked out the window. Gray clouds were gathering over Lake Michigan. "What are you trying to say, Eliza?" "Oh, nothing, just, the hotel is really upscaled this year. You know, not everyone fits the Fairmont vibe." I nearly laughed out loud. Not fit? I'd designed interiors for 3 different 5-star hotel chains, including one of Fairmont's direct competitors. But Eliza didn't know that. Just like most of the Dunbridge family had no idea who I'd become over the past 10 years. "So who picked the venue?" I asked, calmly. "Me," Eliza answered, unable to hide her pride. "Dad says I have taste. It's the city council's top recommendation, and you know, it's really hard to book this place." I smirked. "Hard?" "Of course, because I was the one who approved the reservation. Through the partner management system Fairmont acquired from Langston Collective 3 months ago." I hung up just as Eliza began rambling about guest performers. The invitation still lay on my desk, cold, formal, and undeniable, like a reminder that no matter how far you go, some returns are simply unavoidable. And this time, I would be the one writing the script. 18 years ago, I left New York with a battered suitcase and a freshly printed degree in interior design. No one in the Dunbridge family believed I'd last a year out west. My father had looked me straight in the eye on my last night at home and said, "No one in this family builds a legacy picking curtain patterns and matching tile colors, Barbara." I didn't respond. I just bowed my head, slid the ATM card he gave me into a drawer, and left before dawn. I started from zero, interning at a tiny design studio for cafes in San Diego. I washed glasses, wiped tables, sketched 3D mock-ups, and worked night shifts at a mini hotel to cover rent. In the beginning, I was designing 10-square-meter bathrooms by day and sleeping on a leaking air mattress at night. But in those cramped little spaces, I learned what no investor ever teaches, what it truly feels like to live in a room. I didn't want to just create beautiful spaces. I wanted to create emotion, to turn a stay into a memory. 3 years later, I launched my first company, Langston Collective, with a $40,000 0 cents loan from a close friend. The office was a loft above a laundromat. But from there, my two partners and I created the first designs for a luxury homestay chain in Aspen. A year later, tech startups in San Francisco started coming to me. They didn't want offices, they wanted spaces with a soul. And I brought that into every corner, every beam of light. By year 5, I had 4 locations, an in-house team of interior architects, and a 6-month-long design waitlist. The biggest breakthrough came in year 7, when I bought a stake from the real estate firm Tavis & Sons and transformed the vacant floors of their old building into a system of flexible workspaces, now known as Langston Lounge. When the pandemic hit, large corporations shut down and switched to remote work, while I opened more branches. Because I didn't just lease office space, I built experiences, workplaces that felt like boutique hotels, with quiet zones, organic bars, and creative spaces open 24/7. That was when Fairmont came knocking. They needed a partner to redesign their entire hotel chain across the Northeast, aiming to attract a new generation of travelers. And they chose Langston Collective. I remember the contract signing day vividly. I wore a beige blazer, hair neatly tied up, and signed a $12 million 0 cents agreement no one in my family knew about. Fairmont used the very booking software my company provided to coordinate the Dunbridge reunion. When Eliza said, getting a reservation at Fairmont is really tough, I just smiled. Tough indeed. Unless you're the one who created the system. From that dusty loft apartment, I now operate 17 Langston Lounge spaces across the U.S., 3 partner hotels in Canada, and a private investment fund dedicated to supporting women-led startups. I walked a path no one in my family dared to take, and now I stand firmly on it, watching them slowly turn around. Perhaps the most haunting thing isn't blatant insults, it's silence. The kind reserved for those left on the margins. When I graduated from the University of California with honors in interior design, no one in my family showed up. No father, no mother, not even a congratulatory message. Eliza sent a brief text. Heard you finished, congrats, I guess. I stood in the middle of the campus in my navy gown, diploma in hand, watching other graduates hug their parents, feeling like a guest at someone else's celebration. I used to think if I worked hard enough, they'd see. But I was wrong. When I applied for an internship at a major hotel in New York, one where my father held shares, I was rejected. No explanation. But I knew. My mother said bluntly, "Don't put your father in that position. He doesn't want the Dunbridge name on a receptionist badge." That line silenced me for almost a week. I remember one Christmas when I was still a housekeeping supervisor at a hotel in Santa Monica. I brought back small gifts, some fragrant hotel soaps, a few towels embroidered with the hotel's logo. When I gave Serena, my cousin, a small package, she sneered and said, "Ah, hotel soap scent. Suits your job perfectly." The dinner table laughed. My mother changed the subject. I just sat silently, listening to them talk about investments, stocks, and people who were truly successful. No one asked where I lived. No one knew I was being considered for regional coordinator. To them, I was forever the girl who cleaned toilets. Even in that year's family photo, I stood off to the far right, and when Serena posted it online, she cropped me out. I wasn't angry, I just felt cold. After that, I stopped going home for the holidays. No birthdays, no Thanksgiving, no Christmas. I worked, I studied, I built my company. Each time they raised a glass for Dunbridge pride, I quietly laid another brick in the foundation of my own legacy. I remember the last time I called my father, it was when I signed my first contract with a major co-working company in Texas. I called, heart pounding, only to hear him say, "Don't call me to brag about trivial things. Call me when you're on Forbes." I said nothing, I just hung up, but I remembered, not out of spite, but to remind myself why I couldn't stop. Sometimes what keeps you going isn't the people who believe in you, it's the ones who never did. So that every step forward, you can look back and whisper, I did it. Even though you never wanted me to. I used to think success would come from working hard and waiting for someone to acknowledge me. But I realized, waiting is a luxury reserved for those who already have a seat at the table. Me? I had to build the table, brick by brick. The turning point came when I was 32. A Canadian businessman, Mr. Russell Kingsley, happened to visit the Langston Lounge in Austin during a business trip. Back then we weren't famous. No flashy campaigns, no glowing logos, just refined design, soft essential oil diffusers, and warm golden light that eased the stress of the day. 3 days later he called me. Barbara, I need you to redesign the entire interior of the Kingsley View Hotel in Vancouver. 3 months, full creative control, no budget cap. Can you do it? I paused for a beat, then replied, not only can I do it, I'll turn it into a destination investors line up to host their conferences in. And I did. I introduced elements that had never been used before. Mood-sponsored lighting systems, hybrid meeting spaces that transform into relaxing lounges, a spa zone integrated with sound-based meditation. The media hailed Kingsley View as a revolution in the hospitality industry. Forbes called me the emotional architect of next-gen spaces. That's when my phone stopped ringing, it started buzzing non-stop. I began receiving invitations from big brands, not just for design but investment partnerships. A real estate conglomerate in Boston offered to sell me a former commercial district to convert into a high-end work resort entertainment complex. I didn't just accept, I negotiated for brand licensing rights. And that's when Langston Collective stopped being just a design firm and became an experience empire. 2 years later, I bought out a boutique hotel chain in Portland, the very place where I interned fresh out of school. The first room I renamed was the one I once cleaned, Sweet Barbara. And then Fairmont came to me. They wanted to overhaul the interior aesthetic of their Northeast hotels, targeting younger guests who craved minimalism with high-end standards. I became their strategic partner. A portion of their booking systems, brand design, and even signature scent selection for each property was executed by Langston Collective. What they didn't know was that the same system had been used to book the Dunbridge family reunion. A silent, elegant circle, complete and deliberate. I never sent performance reports to my family. I didn't post contract wins online. I didn't speak at award galas. I just worked. I built. I let my success speak, where their mockery could no longer drown it out. And now, I'm preparing to welcome them, not as family, but as guests entering my space, living within my system and finally, forced to see me. I stared at the event layout on my laptop screen. Every chair placement, light angle, entrance path, and ambient scent. None of it escaped my control. If they once thought I didn't belong at the Dunbridge table, then this time, they would sit in a space I designed, curated, and owned. Marcus, my operations assistant, walked in just as I was adjusting the lighting scheme for the main table. Final guest lists updated. Want me to forward it to security? Not yet, I replied, eyes still on the screen. I want them to arrive exactly at 6:45 p.m., not earlier, not later. He nodded, familiar with my rhythm of precision. I planned this reunion as if I were organizing a national summit. Everything, from the type of flowers on the dinner tables to the background music in the elevator, was selected based on the habits, preferences, and prejudices of my own family. I ordered a 2005 Bordeaux, the kind my father always bragged could only be enjoyed in Paris. I reserved a special softback chair for Aunt Sylvia, the one who always complained that American hotels ruin a noblewoman's spine. And of course I had the event host's name written as B. Langston. Just ambiguous enough not to raise suspicion, but still unmistakably me. I knew Eliza would place herself at the main entrance to greet guests. She always liked to be where the cameras were, so I had a spotlight installed, angled perfectly to light up one person standing alone, making them look exposed in the vast space. And the seating? I arranged for my father and the most prominent relatives to sit dead center, right where the crystal ceiling lights shone brightest, ensuring they couldn't look away when the truth was revealed. I had no intention of revenge, but I believed a well-placed nudge, a reminder that the one they once looked down on was now the one signing every decision, would be far more powerful than any speech. The Dunbridge family reunion would be held on the rooftop of the Fairmont Hotel, the very place I was once denied entry to as a broke college student. Now, I was the one deciding who got in, and how they entered. When Marcus returned with the final file, I smiled. Not a victorious smile, but one of peace. Because this time, I didn't have to shout to be heard. All I had to do was open the door and let them step into the world I had built. Every brick, every light, every breath, soaked in the very value they once denied. Me. At exactly 6:45 p.m., I stood in the control room on the top floor, in front of the security screens showing every corner of the hotel. They arrived just as I expected. Designer bags, gold watches, polished shoes, and practiced smiles. Eliza was the first to step out of a silver SUV, wearing a blazing red Alexander McQueen dress. She posed under the floral archway like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Not far behind, my father arrived in a perfectly tailored gray suit, followed by Aunt Sylvia, cane in hand, eyes scanning the space like she was appraising an estate. They had no idea where they were walking into. Marcus stood beside me, watching the screens, his voice soft. "Are you sure you want to do this in person?" I nodded. "If I don't show up, then everything I've built is just a number on paper. They need to see it." The Fairmont rooftop had been transformed into an elegant space with modern European flair. Walnut wood floors, Italian crystal chandeliers, classical music weaving through the ambient laughter. My father stood in the center of the room, chatting with a few old friends, probably bragging about a recent investment. Eliza lingered near the wine table, champagne in hand, scanning the room to make sure everyone noticed her. At exactly 7:15, the hotel manager approached Eliza and bowed politely. "Excuse me, Miss Dunbridge. There's been a minor adjustment from the event sponsor." Eliza raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed. "I coordinated directly with your management. No one needs to adjust anything." "I understand, ma'am, but this is a special request from Ms. Langston, the venue's investor and the primary sponsor of this evening's event." The room froze. Eliza blinked, visibly unsettled. "Langston who?" I stepped forward from the far end of the hall, walking slowly, the lighting casting just enough glow to reveal my face. Heads turned, glasses paused midair, whispers rippled. "I think," I said calmly, "you know who I am." Eliza's eyes widened. "Barbara?" I smiled. "Also known as Barbara Langston? Founder of Langston Collective, and the one who signed the contract for tonight's event." The air in the room thickened instantly. No one spoke. I walked up to the small stage where an LED screen lit up. Langston Collective's logo appeared, followed by bold text. "This space was created by Barbara Langston, former member of the Dunbridge family." Whispers erupted. A few guests glanced at each other, as if unsure whether they had misheard. But I hadn't. I looked directly at my father. "You once said I didn't deserve to carry the Dunbridge name if I chose to clean hotel rooms. And you were right." I paused. "I didn't need that name to become anything, because I don't clean rooms anymore. I own them." The screen behind me began to shift. Images of my projects appeared: the co-working space in Seattle, the hotel in Vancouver, the luxury resort complex in Palm Springs. With each image, the silence grew heavier. I turned to Eliza. "This Fairmont Hotel? You were able to book it because Langston Collective approved it?" "I approved it." "And the preferred rate? It's 35% above market." "Because that's what I decided." The champagne glass in Eliza's hand trembled slightly. I exhaled, not in anger, but in release. "You erased me from every photo, every holiday, every memory. But tonight in this space, every detail, from the napkin color to the playlist, is mine. I glanced around the room at the people who once treated me like a joke, now frozen as if someone had pulled all the air from the ballroom. Don't worry, I'm not asking anyone to leave. Because the truth is, I invited you here, so that finally, after all these years, I could see the look in your eyes, when you realized who I really am. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their admiration. I just needed them to see me, for the first time, and not be able to look away. My father stepped forward, each movement slow, as if even he couldn't quite believe what had unfolded. His face, once stoic, now revealed a flicker of confusion. Barbara, he called my name, for the first time in nearly 10 years. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted him to continue. I needed to know after all these years of denial what his first words would be. Now that I wasn't the girl left out of the family photo, but the owner of the room. You're the one behind all this? His voice quieter than I'd ever heard. I nodded, slowly, not pridefully, just firmly. And everyone knows? Huh? His eyes scanned the room, where glances were still darting toward me, now mixed with awe and discomfort. They know, I replied, not because I told them, but because I no longer have to hide. He stood silent for a long moment. Then, something no one expected happened. He exhaled heavily and took a step back, as if finally understanding the distance he had built between us. I was wrong, he said simply. About everything. My eyes blurred a little, but I didn't let the tears fall. I don't need an apology, Dad, I said, voice steady. I just need you to acknowledge one thing, that I chose the right path, even if it wasn't the one you laid out. He nodded, eyes dropping, like he was sorting through the years in his mind. For the first time, the man I once saw as unshakable didn't look so invincible. When you left, he said softly, I thought you'd come back quickly, thought passion was pretty, but it would starve you. I let out a soft laugh. I was hungry, yes, but I didn't starve. I was arrogant, he said. I thought success only came in one form and that it had to carry the Dunbridge name. I looked at him, no longer with resentment, just clarity. A name doesn't make a person. What we dare to build, to believe in, that's what defines who we are. He stayed silent, then looked up, his voice softer than I'd ever heard. Could you ever forgive me? I didn't respond right away. Forgiveness isn't something you say in a single sentence. But I extended my hand, offering him a glass of champagne from the tray. I won't say I forgive. But I do believe change starts when we dare to call each other by the names we forgot. He accepted the glass, and for the first time in my life, my father raised his glass to me, not as a daughter needing correction, but as one person to another, as if he finally saw me, not as the dreamer he once dismissed, but as the woman who built an empire out of the very bricks he once deemed worthless. After the reveal, the reunion carried on, but the air was no longer the same. There were awkward chuckles, cautious glances, late attempts at polite conversation. They tried to act natural as if the years of distance hadn't happened. But I didn't blame them. I didn't need them to understand everything I'd gone through. I only needed them to no longer deny the person I had become. As the guests began drifting toward dinner, I quietly walked to the large glass window. The city of Philadelphia stretched before me, golden lights scattered across crowded streets, glittering like a gentle whisper. You came home, but in your own way. Marcus came up beside me, handing me a quick report. Smooth event. No one left early, and, he glanced at me, half smiling, they're all asking for interior consultation info. I laughed. Of course they are. Who wouldn't want to be designed by the Dunbridge family's failed artist? I looked around the room where every light, every object had been chosen by me. Every detail here was a fragment of my journey. From the cramped room in Santa Monica to the first contract in Vancouver. From a worn-out desk to international conferences. Success, I realized, isn't about standing on a podium waiting to be acknowledged. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing you don't need anyone's approval anymore. My father remained seated at the center table, silent, probably thinking about the years he'd missed. Eliza whispered something to a friend, her eyes sneaking glances in my direction. Not with arrogance this time, but with caution. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt at peace. I used to imagine this moment would be a dramatic revenge, a grand declaration, a glorious win, but in truth, what made me smile was much simpler. I no longer had anything to prove to them. I rewrote my story, not in the family's voice, but in the voice of my own heart, my reason, and every step I dared to take, even when no one believed the path was right. And maybe real success isn't about surpassing them. It's about surpassing the version of myself they once imposed on me. Barbara's story isn't just a journey from being dismissed to being successful. It's a powerful reminder that you don't need recognition to begin. You only need to begin and let your achievements speak for themselves. In a world full of judgment and mold, she proved that success isn't about pleasing others. It's about being honest with yourself. In real life, sometimes you don't need revenge. Just build something so strong that no one can ignore your presence. What do you think about Barbara's journey? If it were you, would you stay silent or rise like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next powerful stories about this family's turbulent life.